Right. Okay, yeah. So we are good to go. Okay, guys, thanks for coming on the interview with Tri Nation. Brad, I would like to start with you. Can you share a bit more about your triathlon and duathlon background and your key performance goals coming to Worlds?
Yeah, cool. So my story is I started super late. So my background was in rugby, athletics at school and university, and then joined the armed forces. So I was always keeping fit, but never specifically training for competition. It was just a byproduct of the job. Um, but then when I left the forces, I was really struggling for something to do, something to, keep that, I guess, that drive going, that motivation. And team sports had passed me by. By then, I was in my early 30s, and I didn't want to go back to joining like a rugby club or anything like that. So started doing individual training, which was, just started running, gradually picking up the pace, joining local running clubs, training with them, gradually moving up through the ranks. Started racing 10Ks locally. Quickly made some good gains. Started going under 40 minutes pretty quickly, and started thinking I've got a reasonable engine here to start doing something half decent. And then started racing more longer races. Did a marathon. Went under the 3 hour marathon mark, which was pretty good as a goal. And then during lockdown, when the roads were super quiet in the UK, cycling was just the best thing, the best thing ever, because there was no one on the roads to stop you. So I started cycling, and again, really enjoyed it. Hadn't really cycled much since being a kid, really, but picked it back up, loved it, ran it side by side with the running. And then a few people started saying, look, your stats are looking good. You should be starting to think about, combining these things, doing some local races. And then the idea of duathlons came in. So again, this is about 5 years into, recreational training. Started to do some races, started to place pretty well in my age group, and we're getting up into the sort of 35 to 40 age group by this point. Started to do well locally. Started to do well with the bike and the running side by side. Started to swim a bit more, again through lockdown, and thought about triathlons. So then the Ironman idea came in. So I did a couple of half Ironmans, knocked one out in around like 4:20, something like that. So again, scoring pretty well in my age group. And then started to think that the two things that suited me were the cycling and running, because I was always too far behind on the swim to really challenge the podiums. So I looked into duathlon as a serious sport, and found that you could actually represent the GB team at duathlon when it comes to multi-sport events. So started to focus on that over the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 years, and again started to learn how to qualify, learn what events I needed to turn up to, learn the standards required, and then gradually just trained on my own, really, without any real serious coaching, and managed to do okay and start getting into the, getting qualified. And it started where I represented the GB team in 2024 at the Euros in the sprint distance, and that was my first, foray into the GB age group categories. Placed okay off my own training, not really, doing anything structured, and then thought to myself, I like this. So I want to qualify for the Worlds next year, which would have been 2025 that's just gone. And so then the back end of 2024, trained quite hard to then qualify for the European sprint and standard, and the world sprint and standards. That meant qualifying at 4 different races, all age group events around the country. And then when I had all those 4 qualifications, the trips were all locked in. That was one to Poland in earlier this year, and then one to Spain, which was the Worlds. And that's when I started speaking to you guys and said, look, serious competitions coming up, big ask on the body, a lot of load over those weekends. Can you guys help me with the bike and the running aspect? And that's brought me pretty much up to where we are now, having finished the Euros and the Worlds. 2 5th places at the Euros, with a 10th and an 11th at the Worlds. So a really good, solid season for a first time out doing all 4. and can look back and be really happy with it. And we're now in that kind of deload, just enjoying a bit of knock around training for a while until next year. Pick it up again and hit these same events again, which I've qualified for again by virtue of placing well in the existing events, and do it all again and hopefully squeeze up that leaderboard and get some podiums. That's the aim.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's great. I mean, in this very short period of time, I think we've achieved quite a bit, especially,
Thank you. Yeah, it's been
yeah,
quick.
yeah, with you being very disciplined about what you're doing, and of course, with the expertise from Wei Liang from Podium Performance. So, Wei
Exactly.
Liang, yeah, can you please, describe your role as a coach at Podium Performance and your approach to, preparing athletes for elite level competitions?
Yeah, hey guys, maybe just start off with a little bit of an introduction of my background. So I've
Yeah.
been a sports scientist for the last 20 years. So I was just reflecting last month that I started my sports science degree July 2005 when my parents shipped me off to Australia, and it's 20 years last month. So I've worked with several countries. I've worked in Japan, I've worked in Australia, I've worked in Belgium, always in an almost very high performance kind of environment with very, very high level elite athletes. But after Rio in 2016, I decided to step away from high level sports science at the Olympic level. So I took a sabbatical and then I came back and founded Podium Performance because I saw that there's a space for high quality sports science work in not necessarily super elite setting. So these are athletes who are like super motivated, super driven, who probably has the passion and the interest in getting what elite athletes are getting, but they would have trouble walking into a national body and say that, hey, I need a VO2 max test, or I need to work with a scientist that can guide me on certain things. So I saw that there was a space there. So I set up Podium Performance for this exact reason. Yeah.
Excellent. I mean, that's very inspiring in a way, and I think that's one of the reasons why we actually connected and chose to work together. Yeah, because we want to create more like accessibility for athletes. Yeah.
Correct.
All right. Great. Great. Now, okay, so we're gonna move forward and we're gonna go into the training program structure. This is where this is where your expertise actually come in. What was like the overall periodization plan for Brad's training cycle leading into the back-to-back World Championship races?
Yeah, I mean, if you were tuning in at the start of the interview, like when Brad was saying about the 4 events, I
Yeah.
think it made me think about this whole thing from the very start. I had to chuckle a little bit because when I heard that he was going to do back-to-back races for sprints and standard distances twice over 2 days, and then 1 month later come back for Worlds. To me, I was like, oh, okay, not done this before, but I've got swimmers who have swam multiple heats in Olympics and stuff, that kind of stuff. So to me, I was like, okay, it's achievable. And as with my work, my strength comes from setting boundaries of accountability for both the athlete and the coach. Like the athlete can tell me that they have lofty goals, and I'll hold them accountable. And we will have that chat at the very start, like I did with everyone here. The first question was always like, how many hours can you put in? Let me see what you have been doing. Let me see that I can kind of have a feel about whether you're capable of that objective that you have just outlined. And with my kind of training, can we actually get close to what is being asked of the task? And after that, with Brad, we went through this period of looking at programs and discussions and nonstop of understanding each other's position. I think we were very confident that we could do something.
Yeah.
And it's all based on Brad's baseline level of commitment to himself and his sport, which is really commendable. And honestly, that made my life so much easier. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
kudos
having
to you, Brad.
everything like mapped out and
Yeah.
already, yeah, and with him being, very accountable for everything, it's
Correct.
yeah, yeah, it makes things easier for us as coaches. Yeah,
Correct. Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Okay, next one. So like, how were the key training zones defined and monitored?
Mm.
Like, do you use any physiological testing data, like lactate threshold, VO2 max?
Yeah. So the magic about technology these days is that you have power meters and you have running watches and all that kind of stuff. So without doing too much testing, I was able to start work with Brad immediately because of the power meter and the race pace stuff that he has been doing. And over the years, I've realized that I've moved away from strict zones. I've gone towards power at durations, and I always try to work the physiology through what someone is capable of for every set duration. For example, if someone's capable of 500 watts at 1 minute, I'll give them 1 minute intervals at a certain percentage of the 500 watts. So that was always the case of which I was working through with Brad. Same for his running. I will put him through time trials whereby I will know that for a kilometer he's able to do it in maybe a 340 pace. And then when we do 400-meter intervals, I'll turn that into maybe a 330 or 325 pace. And then with that continuous communication, we do check in with each other and say, were you struggling with that? And on top of that, it was like always very RPE based. Like he would finish a workout and he would write in his training diary like what he's feeling. And also throughout the entire training window, he's also keeping up with his daily wellness, which is a 1 to 10 score that I use. Like 1 being you're feeling absolutely crap, and 10 meaning you're waking up and you're feeling like you can take on anyone. So with different measures like this today, I was able to really have a good grasp of what Brad was going through, even though there's like thousands of kilometers and like almost a 8 to 10 hour time zone difference. So I think we were very very successful in working together on that. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And then like so here's another question. Like, how do you structure the training volume and like
Mm.
the intensity across the bike and the run disciplines, to
Yeah.
like optimize aerobic capacity and race specific power?
Mm. So remember at the start I said that there's the space for high quality in a real world environment of working adults. So that
Yeah.
also means that I did also move away from the typical training peaks approach, whereby I would give someone a Monday to Sunday kind of program, because once I get a good gauge of the athletes' commitment levels and their work arrangements, I've always fell back to one of freedom. And I have my previous mentors and Olympic coaches that I worked with to thank for this, because they always say that it's the athlete who chooses when they want to work hard. And in any training week, they have key sets. And I've taken this on board at the extreme end of this, meaning the key sets, right? So in my training program to Brad, I would write out only key sets that he's supposed to achieve, right? And bare minimally for any working adult, I can almost guarantee that if you do only the key sets, you would get away with completing what you set out to do, right? Whether we do it well or not is another question. But if we do the key sets, we will succeed in completing what we set out to do, right? And in Brad's case, of course, he over-delivered. He stuck to the program. He found time to do everything that was asked for him. He even did stuff that nobody asked of him, like to improve his transition, to really put in effort to work on his nutrition. So these were the things that showed me like how hungry Brad was. So as I said earlier, he really made life really, really very easy for me. So back to your question. So with the key sets, Brad works around those into his schedule, and he's free to have as little or as much as he wanted. And I just monitored from afar whether he was in the right direction or not. Because we know that when the event comes, you need to have your taper. So I need to watch out for that taper. And before that taper, of course, we need to have a significant level of training load so that we can achieve those adaptations. So for me, it was just making sure that he was doing enough. And most of the time, he was just bang on.
Excellent. Yeah, Brett, like with, so much going on, and, the training program has got like so much load, and you adding on more things. How do you manage your fatigue throughout the training blocks?
Yeah, so it's real life comes into play. I'm not, when you're not a professional, but you're kind of trying to train like a professional. You're trying to still put in the amount of hours that a pro would, but the job comes into it. Your holidays come into it, travel, all these kind of things. So I've always been very good at getting something done regardless. That might be like an OCD mindset, but it's an obsessive thing where if I didn't do it, it wouldn't be worth the consequences. So that never happens. So I train every day, and I've been very lucky with injuries. I think touch wood, I've had no real significant injuries that have stopped me training. That may have just been kind of built up through the days of playing rugby, the days of looking after yourself through school and uni, the armed forces type stuff. But the main thing that you guys added was the accountability for the really tough stuff. So everyone's got a tendency to go out, and I'll train 7 days a week, and let's just say my training peak score would average 100 a day on a fairly good week, building up to competition. That the intensity of the stuff that's in the plan that Wei Ling put in, especially for cycling, those dark days in the gym, and I've got a gym downstairs, I'm very lucky, all the kit's ready to go, so there's no excuses. There's no way out of me doing that. The mindset is that if I don't do it, I look silly in terms of on the training plan to Wei Lang. I'm not accountable, and it's one of those things where you've got to maintain that real high level even on the days where you don't want to do it. And there's many days where you wake up on a Monday and you look through the training plan that's put in by Wei Lang and you think, Jesus, this is tough. You look at the bike segments, the 600 plus watt, for minutes on end and this stuff. And I know they're going to be horrific sessions. And there's no one watching you. There's no one who cares. There's no one that's going to tell me to keep going apart from yourself in your head. So that's something I've built into the training, that if Wei Lang puts it out there, I'll give it my absolute best to get it done. That being said, you can't do that every single day. So having the key sessions in there mixed in with the recreational sessions made it achievable, much more achievable. So I'd look at the diary and I'd think, right, I can definitely do at least 4 out of 5 of these sessions, maybe the whole lot, but at least 4. And that's what I tried to stick to. I pre-programmed all the numbers into the training plan, the watch, or onto Zwift, and basically put myself through the ringer to the point where some of these sessions were, at the end of the session, were absolute max ability, where I'd almost be failing at the end. And in some cases did fail. But I always sleep well. I think I keep my nutrition pretty clean. I stay injury free. I've got a very unstressful job, in terms of it's finance, but I'm not dealing with high levels of stress. So I was able to keep it varied, keep it fun, follow the plan, and you can see the track as it builds. That it's not going to be forever. So you think, right, these few hard weeks before we taper, just get through them. And then that the nice side of it happens on the deload weeks, which were great when you hit those points. So exactly what Wei Lang says, make it realistic. Don't be monitoring it every single day because life gets in the way. Try and stay as injury free as possible, but the accountability in your own head is the only thing that's going to get you through it. Because at the end of the week, if I said I'd missed 3 sessions, there's nothing you guys can do about it, is there? It's me that's the one that turns up on the podium on the race start line, selling myself short. So why waste all that money and time and put all the training online and have so many people supporting me if I'm going to ditch sessions? It just doesn't factor in my head. So the mindset's a big thing. And I'm not young, I'm 44, so it's a lot of people just get to this age and just can't be bothered with it. It's too much because of family, etc. So to do it at an older age, I think you've just got to rely on having that innate ability to do it in the first place. But 90% of it is mindset and just getting on that session every single day and trying to grind it out. But it's tough. I'm not going to lie. It's not easy. There were weeks when Lang would put the session in and I'd think this is impossible. But then you factor it in, you load the bike up, you get on it, the adrenaline starts going, the first reps get knocked out, and then you're in for the long haul then, and it happens. And by the end of it, my numbers were much, much higher, VO2 max higher, power numbers higher, my critical race speed running was higher. I was able to function at 5.5 minute mile in low threes, reasonably comfortable, and low 3Ks, reasonably comfortable for long periods. So there was no doubt that at the end of that peak period, I was performing at the best. So by the time I turned up on race day, I felt brilliant.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, and again, with so much load and knowing that you don't like to do recovery, was there any recovery in any
Not much.
of that training?
Not much. And as I said, I've said to you guys before, I'm not really one to be talking about recovery because that's probably, although it is a weakness of mine, I need to rest more. But equally, I hate just sitting around on a day. I'll have to do something. So whether it's active recovery or go down the swimming pool or do something, there's always got to be something I've achieved that day on the physical side of things. So recovery is not something you couldn't really talk to me about recovery, but it's something that I do need to perhaps improve for next year's comps, I think.
Yeah, so I think because recovery and having a good rest, planning the whole thing properly, you'll see the improvements, or you can see a lot of improvements. So planning the recovery is very important, as much as loading a lot of training, right? Yeah, and I think Wayland has a lot of experience about this as well. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I'll touch a little bit on the part about Brad saying that he's got no recovery. I think what Brad said is really subjective. I think whatever Brad did on his easy days serve as recovery for him. Like he said, he's not used to doing nothing. But if you look at his training diary, he's doing yoga, he's going on easy runs, right? All this are recovery as well. Recovery doesn't always mean like you get into an ice bath, you go for a massage, you sleep in. For some people who are active, like Brad himself, this counts off as recovery because in our training diary, there are days whereby there are 4 out of 10s, 3 out of 10s. So don't ever feel that you're not recovering, Brad, because there are easy days, right?
Yeah.
Not every day is difficult. I was also gonna go back and touch on a few things. Like, my friend, you are from the armed forces and you're from a rugby background, both of which are made up of people who refuse to admit that they are injured.
Yeah.
True. So but in saying that, you were not injured at all. There were some calf issues and niggles. But we worked through those fine, right?
Nothing that stopped me. That was the point. It was things that if the calf, maybe I went on one of your quick runs one day and I felt the calf was tight and it meant I had to limp home for a couple of miles, but I didn't push it to the point where it torn completely. It was a case of then just do the bike for a few days, and by the end of that, I did a couple of steady runs for that next week, and I was then back on it. So it was like nursed my way back into it. So I wasn't injury free entirely, but nothing which completely put me out of the game.
I remember those few weeks we kept in touch a little bit more, and everything was like, even though I was still giving the programs, I was giving it with the perspective that you might be tempted, because I know that you're super driven. So the thing with super driven people is that they will push regardless, especially with someone with Brad's background. They will just push through the pain, and that's the worst thing that I can give anyone. So before I gave you that training program, I made sure to tell you that, look, keep an eye. Keep an eye on things. If you feel the niggle, if you feel that pull, just stop immediately. So the other part I wanted to go back to is I'll just put some numbers for context. When Brad first started, he was at that mid 20, high 20 hours per month. So that works out to be about eight hours per week. And I think from the very beginning, we set the expectations. I explained that we will be increasing those hours and they would be predictable. Like I would tell you that maybe around March, which is 1 month before European champs, we might be seeing high number of hours. So I had a quick look. It's about 40 hours per week. So that was 10. So we went from about 8 to 10, which is 2 hours more per week. But these things add up, right? And what was also said was that in these 2 hours, as well as a modification of what Brad was accustomed to doing, we added a lot more high intensity, right? So if you look at TSS scores for those data freaks out there, our training load scores were almost twofold, with
Yeah, it was
20%. Yeah, with a 20% increase in number of hours, we were able to push the training load up. So, I mean, this is what I mean by high quality, cutting edge approach. Is that you have a coach that you can always talk to at any point of time that you want to ask questions, which means that you are able to push people right close to the edge, too close to some liking for some people. But that's where the attention to detail comes in versus buying an off-the-shelf program. Yeah, so I really feel that there is a market for such things, and I encourage more athletes to consider this.
Yeah, and we kind of knew what we needed to do. You know, we looked at the results of previous competitions, and I knew that I needed to run a 16 to 17 minute 10K. Or a 16, 17 minute 5K or a 35 minute 10K. Then I needed to ride at 4 watts per kilo for an hour at least. And then I needed to run a 2.5K in 8 minutes, 9 minutes, or a 5K at the end in 16, 17, 18, whatever it was. So I knew what the parameters were, and I needed to be able to turn up on that day with those power numbers and that comfortable pace in my head, to know that I can get off that 10K quick enough to then still be able to ride and still be able to run. So when I'm doing this whole plan, I'm thinking, is this supporting those exact goals? And by doing the fast-paced runs, the intervals, by the time I turned up on the day, I don't know what the time exactly was, but it was a very quick 10K. But I was able to then jump off and sit on the bike at 4 watts plus per kilo in a good pack of top riders and be okay. It felt like it was straightforward, you know. And the only time I'm going to get beaten in that race is simply as if someone is naturally better than me, because I know they haven't worked harder. They just have to be naturally quicker, and then fair play to them. I can handle that. But what I didn't want to do is turn up thinking that they'd out-trained me, you know, because then it's a waste of time. So my mindset was do what I could, appreciate your natural barriers. I'm not a tiny guy. I run around at 12 stone, so I'm not an 8 stone lightweight, you know, to dance around like Bambi running a 32 minute 10K. But equally, that same guy might not be able to put the power out on the bike. So being that kind of hybrid in the middle was really important. So a good share of the load was quite important.
Yeah, totally agree, man. Totally agree. So I just want to go a little bit towards coming closer towards your race day. How do you could you detail your preparation for your tapering process, and how you peak physically? Because a lot of people talk about tapering and stuff, but they don't really understand what tapering is, and they don't know when to do it as well. Yeah.
So we had it built into the schedule, and Wai Lang would basically say, this is where we start to bring the load down, and you could really see that the load shifted from 1.5 to 2 hour hard interval bike sessions, 150, 160 TSS score. Those equivalent runs and bikes would become shorter, but still have some intensity in there. So the intervals might be cut from a 14 interval ride to an 8 interval ride. So there'll still be some peaks in the training to keep yourself feeling sharp, because I needed that. I wanted to feel that I'm not losing these gains, because psychologically, if you start not training as hard, you think you're losing everything. So I needed to have some kind of sharpness in there. But I just felt that everything was decreasing in time, load, building down to the week before, which was virtually, a kind of 2 mini sessions just to show that you can still do the power and the runs, probably for confidence. But ultimately the load decreased from nearly 1,000 TSS type weeks down to probably 300 to 400, and that's just me choosing to do things despite being told I should do nothing. I would still go out and just do a light jog or something. So the tapering was just a straightforward downward curve from that peak of around 2 weeks. The first week of those 2 was a kind of like a half week, and then you'd almost say like a quarter week at the end. With the races on the Saturday, Sunday, we had to travel. So Thursday, Friday was a recce kind of idea, not doing very much, just feeling what the competition was like, making sure the food was there, real life type stuff, organising the digs and making sure that you had a decent bed to sleep in, all these kind of things. But ultimately, by the time I turned up on the line, when you've had your pre-workout, all the energy's there, you've tapered, you feel, the idea was to feel brilliant on the start line. And you do, the adrenaline's buzzing, you feel just like you're ready, you're like a coiled spring ready to go. And then it makes that 10K race, the 5K race to start with, it felt like it was, a walk in the park almost, compared to what it would feel like 2 months previous. So just a real deload phase, nutrition, sleep, and try and work on just taking a little bit of rest and just fizzling it out down to that point, and a trust in the fact that all the training you've done is still there and that you haven't lost it. That's the bit that's the worst bit for your mentality, is thinking, can I still do those efforts I did 2 weeks ago, because I haven't done them since? So it's a confidence thing as well.
Yeah, excellent. So, in short, like the whole training plan, after doing so much, really prepared you for the race really, really well. I mean, given the variations in how the race will look and stuff like that. Yeah. So
Exactly.
that's great. That's great. Yeah. So Wei Liang, on your end, like from a coaching perspective, like how do you adjust the plan leading up to the races based on like Brad's feedback and readiness?
So I think Brad has pretty much
Covered
spotted everything
yeah.
that I was trying to say, like especially the parts I think that's most important to highlight is that confidence that you're still able to punch the power that you were punching before. Because a lot of athletes, even at a very, very high level, when they are in that tapering, peaking period, they tend to feel a bit lost. They tend to feel a bit like doubtful about, like, should I be doing this little? Should I be feeling so restless? So a lot of athletes go through that, and for my work with Brad is that we did reduce the volume and the load tremendously, but what stayed in place were very short and sharp efforts, and I would say that these efforts were even higher than during the training program, right? But what they had was also really, really long recovery duration between the efforts. So in a way, I think as an athlete who's well prepared, the last thing you want to take from them leading into a race is that confidence, right? So in my methodology of coaching, I always take the time to insert in this training sets as the event is coming. So really, like, it just serves two purposes. Number one is to still give you a little bit of a push when the event is coming, and more importantly is that psychological part. Yeah, that that when you're going into the race, you're still capable of showing up with all these amazing numbers. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so we're gonna get into the final portion of this. Brad, here's the last question for you. What was the technical and physiological adaptations you feel made the biggest difference in your race performance?
I found that the ability to operate at the interval pace, excuse the cleaner in the background, she'll wave.
That's right.
We've got so yeah, what was I thinking? So the high level efforts on paper, when you're doing those training, when you're doing that, the UK is a bleak place to be. So in the winter it's pretty rough. So it's cold, it's wet, and when you're doing those intervals out in the running areas I'm doing, that's a real man test. Some of those intervals you have to dig deep, and your watch is telling you there's a K coming up that you're running at a ballistic pace. Those efforts that push you above your normal training maximum. So normally I wouldn't naturally choose to run that session. I'd go out and I'd run a quick session, but it wouldn't be quite that quick. And on the bike, the sessions that Wylang put in, which had the real high power out, efforts, I wouldn't naturally have done those. So those extra 10% pushes are the bit that got that pushed the body to a different level, I think. And being able to sit comfortably at a 35-minute 10K pace or a bike at 4 watts per kilo plus was due to those extra high level efforts that taught the body to be able to cope and be comfortable in those spaces. And the first few sessions, when you're doing a 400 watt plus minute section with a minute and a half off and then straight back in times 10, on paper, that first session of trying it was incredibly difficult, and then after a couple of sessions you start thinking, actually I can do this, and then it would become a 420 and a 430 and a 440, and they'd gradually ramp up. But the body quickly became accustomed to those real high level peak efforts. My VO2 score was going up the whole time, so it eventually peaked at something like 72, I think, at one point, which is the best by far it's been. And as I say, the running up some of the hills, the running through the weather, the running through those dark days, just got the body into a point where I thought, on the race day, this is going to be quite easy, because I've just done it down the road not in a race, not in the super carbon shoes, heavy vest on, feeling, not potentially, there's no adrenaline going. So I think that physiologically, I just noticed that the top high end efforts became much easier and much more comfortable to sit in those spaces for longer. Just as hard, because it's all about relative effort. But if I were to go back to that first session now, I'd do it without even blinking. Whereas at the time, I thought, wow, this is tough. So the periodic rises, the pushing further and harder and deeper, just took the training to a level that I wouldn't have done myself. And again, the accountability thing, you plug it in, you start the session, you do it until failure. And on a few sessions that happened, but very rarely. I've normally just about scraped through them. But if I did, I had a massive sense of achievement, knowing that was going to count on race day. So I'd say it nudged my training 10 to 15% into the red, which I would never normally do, which then meant big differences on race day.
Yeah, great, man. Great. Yeah, it's good to know that, all that effort, everything all went in, and all that preparation, all that, going through all the dark days, everything prepped you for race day. Just made it so much more easier.
Definitely.
Yeah. And Wayland, got one last one for you. What advice do you have for athletes coming into compete at elite level, demanding race schedules? Like, what do you have planned for Brad?
Like, what I have planned for Brad was really bespoke. I think, first of all, if you're someone going through something crazy like Brad has chosen to do, you have to find a coach that understands and that believes in your ability to deliver. And like I mentioned earlier, Brad has made it like easy. And also I felt that a lot of the work we did in a not very obvious and conscious way was working on Brad's resilience. All the stuff that he has said and shared in this interview, like about the resilience and the dark days, it is shown in research. Shown in research that for many of the sports, especially team sports, no amount of training is able to meet the demands of game day, right? So I've taken that philosophy on board with my coaching, and I try really hard to put in those elements in training so that my athlete inevitably will come to the race knowing that they've done everything they could and they have gone through darker days than the race, right? And that itself is building resilience. So with that, I would suggest for someone who's not used to working with coaches, give it a go. Give it a go. Find the right one. Build a good chemistry, and it doesn't. Don't limit yourself to, like, maybe in this case, by geography or by ethnicity, because we gave it a go. Like, we established a great banter despite being thousands of kilometers apart. We shared jokes, and we just made the environments really conducive. And with such environments, you build trust. And when the trust is there, like Brad said, when he saw the set for the first time, he never thought that he could do it. And with a coaching philosophy that you can stand by, you would get that extra stuff that you would normally never even think about doing. Yeah. So my advice is this: give it a go. Try working with someone who can push you along. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, William. So, Brad, what's the plan? What's your plans? Your
So
upcoming plans?
the plan is that I have 3 qualifications for next year in the bag. So I've got the qualifications for the European Champs next year, sprint and standard, and I've got the qualification for the sprint at the Worlds, which is in Abu Dhabi in November.
Okay.
So we've got June Euros, which is in Spain near Barcelona, for the Euros, which I'm going to do both races again, because with all due respect to the Euros, the level is about, it's not quite as high as the Worlds, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
So I can get away with 2 races there and still perform pretty well. The idea would be to podium, simple as that, on at least one of them. So that's the goal. And then with the Worlds, really focus on just the sprint distance, because I think that probably suits me marginally more, and try and get that 5K time down to, comfortably in the 16s. Try and ride hard and finish on it, and try and get up near the top 5. Top 5 to podium would be great. And it's a good level of competition. I mean, even at my age group, 44s or whatever, 44 to 49, the times are still just the same as the guys running 30, who are 30, the 25-year-olds. The margins are so small. So I'm in a very competitive group. A lot of ex-pro sportsmen have chosen to then come across and do this. A lot of people with pedigree in different sports have finished with team sports and now do individual sports. So you've got some incredibly good athletes, very motivated athletes. So it's a great section to be in. They're great trips. I think the focus on doing something daily is going to keep going. I'll get back into doing it seriously, I think, probably the beginning of the year, of next year. This last bit of this last few months, I think, this year is going to be recreationally training, enjoying training with my mates, a couple of cycling trips, do some local competitions just to stay sharp. And then I think to build again for those will be a really good goal and keep me focused. So that's the loose aim. Try and stay fit, try and stay injury free, keep working on nutrition, and then look forward to next year building up for the Euros and try and get on that podium.
Okay. And any thought about a T100?
T100. A friend of mine competed in London, who is a very good friend of mine. He literally competed on Sunday, and he won the Olympic distance across the board. And he's 50. So
Wow.
there's hope for me. Yeah, he did the He did the Olympic distance in a very good time, something like just around the 2 hour mark. Really good time, and he beat the youngsters as well. So the answer is yes. That he said the T100 was an excellent event and really well set up, and is really challenging Ironman for a different type of event. So yes is the answer, and that's when I need to do a lot more swimming for that though. So that might be requiring Prem's help on that one.
Yep. So we'll discuss about this.
Yes.
Yeah, soon enough. Yeah. All right. Great. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you for coming on this interview and doing this. It's been a pleasure working with you guys.
Likewise.
And we're looking forward to doing more stuff in the future.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank
There you
you.
go. Well done.
All right. See you guys.
See you guys.
Cheers, Wylan. Speak
See you,
soon.
mate. Yeah. Speak soon.
Cheers, Prem. And let me know if you've got everything you need.
All right, will do. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I didn't
Thanks,
have to
mate.
cover all the questions, so I think
We
this
got a
was
lot out there. Yeah.